my friends, it's Dr. Anthony Balduzzi. I want to welcome you back to another amazing episode here on the Fit Mother Project podcast. And boy, do we have a great one in store for you today, because we are joined by a true expert, Dr. Mindy Pelz, who is a renowned holistic health expert and one of the leading voices in educating women about their bodies, their metabolisms, and how to actually do intermittent fasting properly. Through her books, The Menopause Reset and Fast Like a Girl, Dr. Mindy has empowered hundreds of thousands of people around the world to harness their body's own natural healing abilities through fasting, diet variation, detoxing chemicals from the body, stress management, and lifestyle changes as the key pillars to achieving optimal health and slowing down the aging process. And today we're bringing Dr. Pelz on to talk about metabolic health, fasting, and optimizing health, well-being, and longevity for busy moms, particularly women over 40. So Dr. Pelz, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So you wrote some very impactful books, and we'll definitely link those in the description. And I think it's a nice way for people to get acquainted with your work, both of those, Fast Like a Girl and the Menopause Diet. What's your fundamental premise on what's wrong and underserved when it comes to women's health? Like, why did you have to write these books? Why wasn't it just like mainstay information? Not that like it's,
No, it's a good
I'm glad you did,
Yeah.
but like, why are these like best-selling books that everyone's like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to hear this forever?
You know what? It's such a good question. I'm laughing because a lot of times, especially with Fast Like a Girl, I was like, somebody put your hat in the ring, somebody stand up and teach women how to fast. I watched the obesity code come around. Everybody loved what Jason Fung had to say about fasting and weight loss. And then I watched, Dave Asprey bring Fast This Way, and Will Cole, Intuitive Fasting. These are all great books, but nobody was giving women the how to start to fast differently. And same thing with the Menopause Reset. It was like, why isn't nobody talking about, and they still aren't talking about the lifestyle that women need to bring into their world when they are, moving into their 40s. So they're just conversations we're not having. So to answer your point, I think the bigger issue is that we're not bringing women's hormones into every aspect and every conversation around a woman's health. I don't care if you're talking weight loss, hot flashes, sleep, brain health. You can't talk about women's hormones or women's health without bringing her hormones into the picture. And we have not only a society that is illiterate when it comes to hormones, we have a cultural hush where women aren't given the opportunity to talk about our hormones. So we have a lot of, everybody knows that a woman's a little more moody the week before her period, but we joke about it, we villainize it, but we don't actually help her understand that. We don't have a healthcare system where when you go into your doctor who does a complete CBC and is looking at cholesterol and insulin and fasting glucose doesn't even ask you what day your cycle you're on. And all of those things I just mentioned, by the way, change according to a woman's cycle. And so it's like this conversation that's not being had that has to be had. And I think that's all my books are doing is I'm cracking open the conversation. And I would say that the success of them is because women are like, finally, thank you. And it's a broken system. It's a broken societal issue that I would like us to stop and to free women to start talking about it.
Nice. Well, I think this conversation today is going to be another piece of the puzzle of you doing that around the world, the different podcasts, videos. I want to also reference, if someone gets really excited about this conversation, you have a fantastic YouTube channel, which will be a great place for people also to dive deep and learn more. And I'm only in this aspect to be able to speak from a certain vantage point of experience being a guy. I also see that there's a lot of opportunity when women do understand this, right? Because women's bodies have this cyclical hormonal nature. And when you understand how these hormones ride, you can ride the wave instead of feeling like you're fighting it. You can optimize your training and your fasting and get good benefits because you got times when LH is surging and maybe you want to do certain things during those particular times. And so I think because our audience has varied degrees of scientific background, it'd be nice as we get into this when you feel relevant to define some of these hormones that are key, maybe some of their basic actions and stuff like this. And so let's talk about like what's generally going wrong with women's hormonal health today. And maybe it's like metabolic stuff, insulin resistance. Like, let's start there, and then we'll weave our way into fasting and different therapeutic approaches.
Yeah, it's such a good question. And the other thing I want to add to that before I go through the what's wrong with women's hormones today is that I have had so many men like yourself and not just podcast hosts, not just doctors, but also husbands and fathers that are like, hey, thank you. I'm learning a lot by listening to you and realizing that there's a different way I can communicate to my spouse. There's a different way I can communicate to my daughter. I have doctors that are coming to me and going, I had never really even thought to ask what day of a woman's cycle, and it's going to make me look at blood work different. So we're all in this together, even though this is a woman's issue. And it's coming together and having conversations like this that's going to change it. So here's the primary thing that we need to understand, that our sex hormones, when we deal with men and women, are vastly different. So men, you have testosterone. And testosterone, when it comes in, goes up into the brain and converts into estrogen. So you really only have one hormone you have to think about. And it pulses into your body, they say, somewhere around every 15 minutes. Men work on a daily 24-hour cycle when we're dealing with their hormones. And testosterone's a whole nother podcast to talk about, but a whole nother issue for men, because environmentally that's tanking for men as well.
For sure.
Women, we have 3 hormones, and they're primarily made in the ovaries, a little bit in the adrenal glands, some of it in some of our peripheral tissues. And these 3 hormones are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. When you look at just lifestyle of those 3 hormones, they actually need something very different. Fasting's a great example. This is how I discovered, oh my gosh, women can fast, but we need to make modifications when progesterone comes in.
Yeah.
So estrogen loves when a woman fasts. Estrogen loves when you keep glucose low. So if you go keto, it's great. Estrogen's very forgiving of cortisol. So if you work out really hard or you have a hard day at the office, estrogen's not going to mind. And she comes in day 1 through day 10 of a woman's cycle and peaks around day 12. So progesterone comes in the back half. Progesterone doesn't like cortisol to be high. Progesterone wants glucose to be high. She doesn't want you to fast. She doesn't want you to go on a keto diet. And she shows up the week before your period. So she's literally like the twin sister of estrogen, but needs the completely opposite lifestyle.
Yeah.
So if we look at that, think about everything that women have been doing in a weekly format and not in a monthly format. Working out is one. How many of us work out the same way every week, never thinking about where we are in our cycle? How about diet? How many women have gone from diet to diet to diet, and they're like, I'm a vegan, I'm a carnivore, I'm doing this now, I'm doing that. All of these diets had benefits. The problem was, for a woman, she was doing the same diet every day of the month, and her hormones didn't respond the same way. So eventually that diet will fail. Same thing with supplements, same thing with medication. Everything in a woman's life should be on a monthly calendar, not on a weekly or a daily. Men can get away with that. We can't get away with that. And until we change that, women's health will continue to suffer.
That's powerful. I mean, just even knowing that, it kind of, at least it seems to me, it like seems a little freeing. Yeah. Freeing if you've like struggled with certain things and you feel like it couldn't stick. And maybe it was like because of the certain timing and the environment. And also like there's a lot of grace you can have with yourself when you understand these cycles, to be able to flow better, to be more forgiving during times, and to like really hit it hard sometimes, to come into natural cycles. And as a guy who's like, I'd say I've become quite spiritually oriented. I always think it's so amazing that women, naturally, your bodies are so synced up to these cycles. So like there's such beauty in the rhythmicity of all that, and it doesn't have to be as structured. So let's maybe get into like what can someone take away from this basic understanding of the estrogen is high at times, the progesterone's high at other times, and how can we start to change our diet and our exercise? Let's kind of get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the first thing, part of that conversation is exactly what you just said, which is I want to free women of the guilt and the shame and the negative talk that we have accumulated with every diet we failed at, with every exercise program that didn't give us the perfect body, with every, supplement promise or medication promise, because what happened is potentially all of these tools were great. You just put it into a wrong formula. And now we're going to, that's the conversation to be had, is let's put it back into a monthly formula.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, the best thing to take that conversation and move to a higher thought is that women are as cyclical, or let's put it this way, are really timed with nature.
Yep.
So, and what we are the most timed with is the moon.
Yep.
So the moon, we know, controls tides. That's how powerful the phases of the moon. It can control the ebbs and flows of our oceans. So if it can control that, it can control many of the aspects of what a woman is going through. Now, we are 70 to 80% water. We know what the moon's influence will be on big bodies of water. Now let's look at each individual. So if you are doubting this concept, just know, to your point, I love what you said, that we are connected to nature more than men. It's just part of our natural being. With that in mind, this is my dream, is that women start to see the first couple of days of your period is what I call a transition time. And that transition time, you actually have access to both sides of your brain, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So you're incredibly intuitive, psychic on those, and really quite intelligent on those first 2 days of your period. So pay attention to what your brain is telling you. The other thing about these first 2 days of our periods is the week before that, progesterone was coming in. That is the time we are supposed to go into a little more hibernation. We're a little more intuitive. But the other thing that's happening during that week is that things that are irritating us might be clues as to patterns we need to change, because we are very in touch and inner the week before our period. I always say progesterone's the introvert, estrogen's the extrovert. So when we go into that back half of our cycle, day 21 till we bleed, pay attention to your thoughts. What are you thinking? Pay attention to your relationships. Pay attention to the things in your life that might not be working for you. Because once you start to bleed, you're going to have these first 2 days where usually those are pretty heavy for women. They'll start bleeding pretty strongly. And it's a time where we can purge, not just our blood is a purging, it is a detox, but we can purge old patterns that are no longer serving us. So that time period, if we grabbed a hold of that for women, we could save so much suffering, and we could use our intuitive, magical wisdom to be able to better identify what's working for us and not.
Nice.
That's
wow.
Like the start, right?
I'm excited. I'm so excited about this. And as I should be, I have a wife and a daughter. So,
Perfect.
This is beautiful to be able to celebrate these cycles in a deeply connected way. Okay. So, I think, again, I'm hearing this message that it's grace just keeps on coming through.
Yeah.
It's time to take this space and do things, but also times to hit it hard. And maybe for those that are planners, this could be really synced up when you start to watch your cycle and sync things in. Hard workouts when estrogen's high, after you stop bleeding, and then later on you were relaxing a little bit more when the progesterone is peaking and stuff like that. So where does fasting come into this? Because you wrote a whole book about fasting, and obviously fasting is a powerful trigger and a very natural thing. So how does that play into this whole cyclical nature?
Yeah. So after those first couple of days of your bleed, to me, day one is when you actually need to use feminine care products. That's day one. It's not spotting. It's the official day. Those first 2 days are going to be this transition period, but then your body's going to start to ramp up estrogen. And the environment that estrogen wants to thrive in is one where glucose is low, insulin is low, and really toxins are low. That's another piece that we can pull into this equation. So you'll be ramping up estrogen pretty much until about day 10, day 11. So please go keto, keep those carbs low, and go do more fasting, and you will see the good estrogen come up. Good estrogen will help to protect you against the harmful estrogen. So I'm sure you've talked about this here, but there's 3 estrogen metabolites that estrogen breaks down into. One is helpful and 2 are harmful. So let's use that first 10 to 12 days of your cycle to build the helpful protective ones. And that's where fasting comes in. More fast then. If you haven't started fasting, it's a great time to start fasting. If you want to do a 3-day water fast, which is an incredible spiritual experience and cleansing of your body, do it in that time period. We also know that that's your brain. As estrogen goes up, a woman's brain starts to come online, and she can create, she can stay focused. And because estrogen doesn't mind cortisol, it's a great time to lean in on a project. So if you have a project that's going to keep you up all night, or you're working 7 days a week, do it in those first 10 to 12 days, because estrogen won't mind it. When we go into the ovulation window, day 11 to day 15, estrogen's at her peak, testosterone comes roaring in. And this is it. This is like the big thing. I wish every couple, at least every heterosexual couple, even same-sex couples, could use this. When a woman is in ovulation and testosterone is at her peak, not only is her libido going to be the highest, but her motivation and her drive is going to be incredible. She has estrogen, so her mental clarity and her creativity and her focus is going to be on point. And then she has a little bit of progesterone during this little 5-day period where she's going to be calm and a little more relaxed. So we think of ovulation as the time to create a baby, but if you wanted to launch a business into the world, if you wanted to start drawing or do some kind of artistic project at that time, that is a really good window to do it. You can create whatever you want because you have all these superpowers, these hormonal superpowers. But that also makes it not a great time for long fasts. So I like during ovulation to keep the fast around 15 hours. Some people can go to 17 hours, but nothing longer than that. In Fast Like a Girl, I map out 6 different length fasts. And so the ones that go like 24, 36, 48, 72, those should not be done at this time. You're also not really great. This is not a great time for keto either, because progesterone doesn't like your glucose to go low. But it is a great time to up your vegetables because and cater to the microbiome. So I call it hormone feasting foods, where we bring up our vegetables, we bring some fruits back in, we bring squashes and potatoes. These are not keto foods. Bring them in at ovulation in the week before your period, and then choose the other 2 times to go keto and more fasting.
Nice. Okay, so I love this so much. It's just so practical, so empowering. What does a day in your life look like during the high estrogen period? And then we'll talk about what a day in your life looks like during ovulation, and then the progesterone in terms of foods you do, what your kind of daily rhythm is.
Yeah. So here's the funny part of that story is that I'm 6 months into my menopausal journey, but I'm like, the more I teach this, I'm like, hey, I kind of wish I had my cycle back. But we've been testing the theories that I'm telling you on millions of women, and I've been testing it on myself for the last 10 years. So this is what it looks like. Usually the first couple of days of my cycle, I feel like I don't really want to work out hard. I'm not really looking to fast, but I notice that my hunger shifts. So when the week before my period, I notice I'm more hungry. Right when I start bleeding, I just notice like I'm just not hungry. So as that shows up in those first 2 days, I usually do 1 meal a day. So I'll go into just having dinner. I like to have dinner around 5 o'clock, and I'm a meat eater. I'll go in with a grass-fed steak and a big salad and a sweet potato. That's kind of my go-to for the first couple of days of my cycle. Then usually around day 5, I will look at a longer fast, like a 36-hour fast I might throw in. I do a couple of 3-day water fasts a year. Sometimes I'll throw that in during that time. But then I go low keto. I bring my carbs down to like 10 grams of net carbs, pretty low keto. And from about, let's just say day 5 until around day 12, I'm really trying to stay insulin sensitive. And I'm pushing my workouts. That time you'll find it's much easier. You can do it with, like, ask any woman who patterns themselves like this. They'll say, my God, it was impossible to fast on day 20, but it was effortless on day 7. That's how we're made.
So what foods are you, when you're going that low carb, because I think a lot of women who are listening to this are having anywhere from 50 to 150 grams of carbs, depends on how they do. They're probably doing it decently constantly outside of IF.
Yeah.
So what do meals look like for you during those very low carb times? When do you eat? What are the food sources? How many meals?
When I want to go really low carb like that, it's pretty much a lot of meat and then it's greens. So it's meat and greens all day long.
Okay.
So that's why I only do it for a short period of time. Now, in the book, I give ketobiotic is the diet that I labeled for this phase, and I give women the opportunity to go up to about 50 to 75 net carbs. So you asked what I did. This was just sort of the pattern that worked for me, but some women during that time could go a little bit higher. And that lets you open it up to more vegetables and maybe a little bit of fruits. With a net carb of 50 to 75, you might not get a sweet potato in there, but that's okay. During this phase, if you could lean into vegetables and some berries and some green apples, some of the lower sugared fruits, little lower carbohydrate fruits with lots of fiber and some protein, you'll be pretty good. Because once you go into ovulation, now we go into the sweet potatoes. I actually recommend somewhere between 100 to 200 net carbs, 150 being the sweet spot during that time.
Nice. That's super cool.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on eggs? How do you incorporate eggs into your diet?
Every day.
Yeah, me too. And I want to I feel like if you're a crusader for women's health and hormones, I feel like I'm low-key a crusader for eggs because they're just so misunderstood and they're just so good for your health and all the fat soluble vitamins, the choline, hormonal health. So I'm glad you are a believer in that as well.
Yeah, and here's what people should know about eggs. So for starters, it has all the right nutrient profile to make a baby chick, which means that it can make ligaments, it can make skin, it can make eyes, it can make hair, it can make everything you see on a baby chick. It has those nutrients to make. We don't have a lot of sources of anything else that has that many nutrients in it. So now beyond that, we've got the choline. And my next book that I'm working on right now is what happens to women after 40 to their neurotransmitter system. And why does that contribute to so much menopausal depression? And one of the big reasons is that we're not getting enough amino acids. And choline is a huge one. So don't fear the egg. And if you are worried about the cholesterol, that conversation is more of one that cholesterol is a congested liver. That's all cholesterol is. It's not a genetic disorder that you've been, unfortunately given. It is a liver, gallbladder, common bile duct issue, sometimes the small intestine. And if you go hunting for that reason, for that why it went up, you'll see that it goes way beyond you ate too many eggs.
For sure. And you keep the sugars down. Insulin's not stimulating as much internal cholesterol production. And if you're eating the right kinds of fibers and greens, they're binding some of this stuff up and detoxing the body. Like you have a effective cholesterol system that you're recycling. And that's beautiful to hear. Okay, cool. So what does your day look like when you're in the progesterone dominant part of the cycle? We're getting, I know the foods. Are you fasting? You're not fasting as much during that time, but are you having a breakfast? When does your first meal come in? Is it breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner? What's the setup that you flow or you recommend during that latter time?
Yeah, so when you come out of ovulation, the hormones dip again. So there's about day 16 to day 19. You can go keto again. You can push your workouts. You can fast a little more. And by the way, one thing that I'm really excited to be collaborating with, do you know Tony Horton, the P90X?
Oh, yeah, for sure. P90X, for sure.
Yeah, so he and I are shooting videos next week to time to a woman's hormonal cycle. And one of the things I've been telling him is we've got to use that testosterone that women get during their ovulation. Why aren't women doing more weightlifting during that time?
Yep.
If you want to build muscle, that's the time to do it. You've got all that testosterone to help you. So once you map this, you start seeing you can map everything to it. So, but anyway, so we come out of ovulation and there's a 5-day period where you can go back into some of these hardcore lifestyle activities that many of the biohacking world loves. But then about day 20, progesterone is going to make her appearance. And this, I called it the nurture phase in the book. I really want to encourage women to nurture themselves. So you will feel more inner. You're supposed to, because you're supposed to hibernate. back in the cave person days, the women the week before their period, they were sectioned off, and then they bled. They were continued to section off. At that point, after the bleeding was over, they were brought back into the community to start to do a lot of the work. We don't do that now. As women, we push through hard during that time. So, what can you do to slow down? So I just interviewed Kate Northrup on my podcast, and she told me that she does everything slower that week. She's like, I walk my kids to school a little bit slower. I don't take as many business calls that week. I don't work out as hard that week. I prioritize sleep more that week. That's what's supposed to happen the week before your period. So no fasting. You're not supposed to go keto. When you get your blood sugar too low, it throws progesterone off. The reason we crave carbs is because your body's trying to give you a signal to elevate glucose. So you lean into that. Don't think you're undisciplined that week. That's happening to you because progesterone needs glucose to be higher. We also need to keep cortisol down. So that's the time to say no to an overpacked calendar or to some of the social events. But I love the word nurture. Just think, how the heck can you nurture yourself? And to the men who ask me how you can support the female in your lives, it's that week. It's to understand that week so that you can take some of the load off of her, and you can help her transition through that week, because then once she starts bleeding, she's back with you, and she's going to be the better version of her. But as long as we have women plowing through that last week, we're going to continue to have crazy menopause symptoms, PCOS, infertility. All of these are just signs that women are living out of accordance with their hormones, but particularly that week.
For sure. And I mean, I'll only expand that comment. They're living out of accordance with natural law, which is governing women's hormones, which I think the same thing could be said about our circadian rhythms in the light, all the artificial stuff that we're doing. It just so happens that women need to be even more synced up to this stuff to ride the wave and to have really true well-being. And again, to emphasize the gifts of the intuition and all the power that comes from those times, as well as the beauty of taking that time to slow down when possible. And this may not mean for someone who's really busy, pumping the brakes completely, but if you scale back even 25% and that intention is part of you there, that's massive, right? I mean, and so good. I love that. And it's kind of clarifying when you know ahead of time, this is what I'm going to do. It's a really nice schedule. And I think a lot of us enjoy schedules. So that's really good.
By the way, I have more men that go, well, shoot, I wish I had all that to tell you.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we've been bitching about it for years. So now we get to take ownership and say, this is what being a woman feels like. And how great is that? And now we can come together, and now you can understand us better, which is even better.
Yeah. Huge fan of that. Okay, so I don't want to throw a wrench into this, but what happens if someone's on oral contraceptives or non-oral contraceptives? Because that must change this a lot. You're not getting that same LH surge. You're having more elevated estrogen or progesterone, or a combination, depends on the birth control. Let's talk about that a little bit for a few minutes.
Yeah, you have great questions. This is
Thanks.
You can tell you have a wife and a daughter. The men that interview me that have the best questions have really important women in their lives. So thank you for asking that. I will tell you that birth control is messing this whole system up. And so there's no great birth control answer for women, and all of them throw the natural rhythm off. So that's a problem that we need to solve at some point. But with the birth control pill, for example, I don't know if you saw that study that when women meet their husbands or their mates when they are on the pill, that their attraction to them is different. And then when they get off the pill, that attraction all of a sudden changes. Did you read that?
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, they what is it, women on oral contraceptives prefer more of a nurturing type male versus maybe a little more of a dominant type male when they're off the birth control. Am I not getting into that correctly, or is it a little more, it's probably more nuanced than that?
Yeah, there's many aspects of it. That is one, but at the core, we are really primal. So we seek out mates that are going to have the best support for us reproducing. So what happens to a woman when she gets pregnant is that her immune system goes down, because she has foreign DNA in her. So she's going to have a lower immune system.
Right.
So what we do is in ovulation, we seek out the smell of a mate that can support our immune system best. So you're actually connected by smell, but it's based off the immune system for the viability of not only the mother, but a fertilized egg.
Wow. That's
Cool,
amazing.
right? I also
Yeah.
want to point out, I love this point. Do you know that it's the egg that determines which sperm gets in?
That's great. Seems right. Seems like a microcosm to the macrocosm,
That's right.
I guess.
That's how powerful we are. So now, when we get off birth control, our smell, our attraction is going to change to our mate potentially because of that smell aspect. Now, hopefully, if it's like you met at 25 and you got off birth control at 35, you had 10 years to form some other good bonding attractions. But it is a really interesting manipulation of the system that is not just affecting our health, but it's also affecting our relationships. So it's a real interesting one.
So what would you suggest to a woman listening to this who maybe is still in an age where she's on some kind of oral contraceptive but still wants to apply some of these concepts to her life? Like, what would she do in terms of diet manipulation, fasting manipulation, training? Like, what are some takeaways and stuff that's still applicable?
Yeah, so there's two things for the woman who's on birth control and cycling. Is one, everything I'm teaching, follow it to what the birth control pill is showing you, or whatever, if you're, I think the hardest one is like if you're on an IUD where you don't have a lot of blood, you want to find a way to track your cycle. There's a lot of great apps out there right now. We just launched a Fast Like a Girl app that's in beta testing. We're building that out, but it's out there too. So track your cycle and just go according to this new and for lack of a better word, manipulated cycle that the pill has you on. When you get off the pill, be aware that that cycle may change. So you could start to look at the moon, you could start to clue in, you could look at temperature. Like, I'm pretty excited, Oura Ring now has a period tracker. So perhaps Whoop does too. But we have a lot of these like bio wearables that have these trackers in them. So start tracking temperatures and then follow that as your new, because you're probably going to see a cycle change. I think the hardest thing, and the one that has shocked me the most with Fast Like a Girl getting out into the world, is how many of the 30-year-olds are suffering right now. The 20-year-olds are as well, but the 30-year-olds, they've been on birth control forever, because when they were 16 or 15 and they were cramping and they were moody and maybe suicidal, gaining weight, their doctor put them on the birth control pill. It became our Prozac.
Everyone was doing it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is that once you decide, hey, I want to get off that, it can take anywhere from 90 days to a year to get that cycle back and to detoxify yourself from it. So go find yourself a good detox. Make sure you're tracking it. Start eating and fasting for your cycle in this new way, and you will see it cleans up pretty quickly.
Nice. And you mentioned the lunar cycle again, and I had a question on that I want to loop back on. Is it that ovulation cycle goes with the full moon? Is that what it is, or is it okay?
Yeah, day one.
So it's ovulation with the full moon is part of the deal. Okay.
That's right. So day one of the new moon would be day one of your cycle.
Yeah.
So like I have an app on my phone that I track the moon. So day one would be that the first 2 days is that point where estrogen's going to start to build. And so those first 10 days when the moon is building, so is estrogen.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice way to remember it too.
Yeah.
The moon's building up, estrogen's building up, moon peaks, and then you have the progesterone phase after the fact when the moon is waning.
Yeah. Which is really
That's
interesting from a spiritual standpoint, because how many times do we see these things that say, oh, it's a new moon, it's a full moon. There's so much creativity, there's so much insight. Well, that's the same thing that a woman's hormones gives her when she ovulates, is she's got all these hormones. So there's so much going on inside of our brains and our bodies during that time, just like how the moon influences us all. And then when it starts waxing, that's when you got to start to think more about progesterone.
Yep, nice. That's cool. Okay, I want to talk about how this applies to menopausal women. I know this will be very relevant to you. You're obviously writing about this, thinking about this right now. Like, what should women who are in menopause or even post-menopause be doing, and some suggestions based on all your experience?
Yeah. So when we hit 40, we need to change our lifestyle. The diet that you did at 35 doesn't work for you at 45, and it definitely doesn't work at 55. So for starters, just the awareness at 40, the lifestyle changes, and it changes in 5 different areas. And this works for postmenopausal women as well, because I really start to see that postmenopausal women didn't make this adaptation. So I've seen more 65-year-olds with hot flashes and weight gain and brain challenges because they just didn't weather that transition very well. So they can go back and do these 5 different changes. These are the ones I wrote in the Menopause Reset, which has been revised and will come out in June. So, but here's how it works. You want to vary your fasting length, like we're talking about. The second thing is you want to vary your foods, like we're talking about. Know how to cycle in and out of keto and fat and hormone feasting. You, as a postmenopausal woman, both of those you can do either on a weekly calendar, and I'll talk about that in a moment, or you could follow the moon. I mean, that's what I'm doing now. I'm following everything to the moon. The third thing that you want to do is you want to really repair your microbiome, because you're getting less hormones, so you need to break those hormones down. I've talked to more women that go on HRT or bioidenticals. They notice nothing, but that's because they're not breaking that hormone down. So you want to make sure that you are feeding that microbiome with as prebiotic, probiotic, polyphenol foods. Then the fourth one is that we have to start looking at our toxic load. So when a woman goes through menopause, the real ups and downs of our hormones causes toxins to come out of our stored tissues. Yeah. The biggest one is lead. So lead is stored in the bones. So as we move through menopause, lead will come out, it'll go up into the brain, and lead is a dumber downer. It will make you depressed, and it will start to make it so you're searching for words, you're losing memory. But also because it came out of the matrix of the bone, it's the first step leading towards osteoporosis. Right. So we've got to start to teach women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond how to detox. Toxins affect us more later on as we move through menopause. And then the last one is what Dr. Libby Weaver, one of my favorite authors, wrote a book called The Rushing Woman Syndrome. And what we now know about women as they go through menopause is that the sex hormone job gets handed over to the adrenal glands. Yeah. And so if you're stressed out, your adrenals are like, hey, I'm over here making cortisol. I can't make estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So that's going to be put on the back burner. And now your menopause symptoms are going to be worse.
Yeah, and it's funny because those same foods that probably support the gut microbiome are going to be adrenal supportive foods as well. Right. You know, having a lot of those phytonutrients, certain kinds of vitamins, minerals, the vitamin C and stuff like that. So it's also integrated, which is a good promise on that. And I really love to hear that.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of overlap, you know, and even in the syncing everything to your cycle, there's some overlap. But there's a lot of tools that you can use that will accomplish many things.
On that note, I have a specific note on the chelation and the heavy metals. So like people could go down the road of like really looking into medically guided chelation and stuff like that. And there's probably a lot of benefit there is a lot of benefit in a lot of cases for people to do that. Is there stuff that people can do like at home to feel like without going to my primary care physician, what can I do to make sure that I am supporting detox of heavy metals specifically in menopause?
Yeah, it's such a great question. The first one is scan every toxin in your environment. Know what's in your beauty products, know what's in your foods, know what's in your medication. I mean, we just bought a new car, and I got in there, and I used to be like, oh, new car smell. Now I'm like, oh, no, toxins. So I'm like rolling all the windows down, airing it out before I sit in it for a long period of time. That's just looking at life through my toxic lens now. Yeah. So look at your environment would be the first one. The second one is that I think as we move through menopause, we really need to support our detox pathways. So this is our liver, this is our gut. So the liver, you know, there's a lot of talk, and I hate this because the anxiety goes up in menopause because of the loss of progesterone, which often makes the wine habit go up and the drinking habit go up. But that's putting extra stress on the liver. Now the liver can't break down these hormones, and so you're going to have a bigger problem. So, or a bigger hormonal problem. So a lot of love. Castor oil packs are great for the liver. Bitter foods are fabulous. Radicchio is my favorite. Arugula, dandelion greens, more ginger is great. Then you want to make sure you're having bowel movements daily. That's really important for menopausal women. And then we can go into like breath work. Like, are you doing that? You can detox through your lungs. And are you doing dry brushing? Are you getting into saunas? Like, there's so much you can do before chelation. And those 2 steps alone could take a woman 6 months to start to find her pattern with.
Totally. And there's so many ways our bodies do detox, and you just gave a lot of good things. And I would add, even things like chlorella or spirulina or some of these natural superfoods that have a lot of great phytonutrients also are kind of natural chelators, which is kind of nice to be able to use those too.
Yeah. It's like a detox lifestyle we have to absorb, to take in, because it won't be like where chlorella falls short is when people are like, oh, I have heavy metals, I'll just take chlorella every day. It's not. It's kind of a weak binder. It's not that great. But what will help is to support your liver, gut, heart, lungs, skin, lymph system. And now you're going to be able to
throw it on top of it. Yeah.
That's right. And then throw some chlorella on top of that. And then if you choose to do chelation, you're going to even be more prepared. So it's just that we go screaming into our 40s and we have no idea what's about to hit us. And what we've got to start to do is realize that everything has to change because your hormones are changing. And so
and your margin for error gets much smaller at that point, right?
Yes.
And I think what you said about the toxins and the fragrances, I want to drive that home. Like, if someone here are still using like old school perfumes, or you have scented Glade things, or you're burning candles or stuff like that, like, it could be a hard transition to recognize the truth, but you should look into that stuff some more and like research, and you'll see that it's really not good for you. These things are stored in fat cells as well. If you're on a weight loss journey, they get released during that time. It can be pretty nasty. Like, we live in a pretty toxic world, and we got to upregulate the detox. So there's a really good reminder.
So if you're listening to this and you're completely overwhelmed, for starters, I wrote it all in a book, and a really quick and easy book. It's called The Menopause Reset, and Hay House just purchased it. I brought it. I put it out into the world a couple years ago. We brought it back. Hay House purchased it. We revised it. It's coming out in June. So there's
nice.
A whole chapter on sleep that I added that I'm really excited about. So there's that. But the second thing is, like, with the toxic issue, oh my gosh, it's so big. And we're so attached to many of the things that are toxifying us. So just ask yourself, what am I doing? Am I sweating every day? Am I moving every day? Am I doing breathing exercises every day? You can start with that. And then look at your environment and just look around. There's a great app. It's called Think Dirty. And you can scan all your beauty products and see if they'll give you cancer, if they'll cause reproductive problems, which AKA means you're gonna have hormonal challenges. If there's gonna be allergy issues, it'll tell you every single chemical that's in your beauty products. So, and then the EWG has some amazing information. You can look at your drinking water according to your zip code. So you just got to start to get to know your toxic load and look at what you can bring down.
Yeah. I mean, this was seriously like a wealth of information. I mean, like, in just 45 minutes, we covered so much ground, and I'm feeling massively inspired personally for my girls at home, as well as for all the ladies who have the privilege to listen to this. This is definitely one of those that it'd be worth like listening through like another time, to go through and write some notes the next time through, in case you were just listening to this mobile or watching it passively. And of course, your books are like phenomenal resources, as well as the YouTube channel. So where would you recommend, if someone's super inspired by what you've shared and they want to connect with you deeper and learn more, where would you like to direct people?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you like this and you're over 40, both the Menopause Reset and Fast Like a Girl are awesome for you. What I can put in a book is so much more detailed and well stepped out compared to what we can, do on a podcast or even on a video. So you can go to Amazon or, anywhere books are sold to find both of those. Then my YouTube channel, my purpose behind my YouTube channel is to teach metabolic health and the intersection of metabolic health with hormones. So I have everything you could ever ask me about fasting to what do we know about brain health and hormones. So I put out 2 new videos every week, and I've been doing that for years. I think we have over 1,200 videos on there. So there's
Dang, you've been busy.
Yeah, there's going to be something there for you.
You're maximizing those estrogen cycles.
That's right.
I can see that.
Thank you for noticing.
Yeah. You're probably live streaming on like Tuesdays in the first 2 weeks of the
right.
The month.
You
So
got it.
perfect.
You got
I love
it.
it.
I love that you caught on. Yes.
So cool. I absolutely love it. I really truly appreciate your expertise and you being a champion for this. Like, it's crazy to me that this is a message that we're just now getting out in a big way. And I'm grateful that we got to do this. And I'll say this too, if just because I found this so impactful, and I'm going to put you on the spot, so you hopefully say yes. If our audience comes to us and they're like, this was amazing, like, we'd love to have you back on in some capacity to speak to our Fit Mother community.
Yeah, I would love to. And I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. And I especially appreciate the men that are catching on to this, because you're right. Why did it take us till 2023 to have this conversation? And I think a large part of that is we had to see that the healthcare system was not serving women, and more women were speaking up about how they weren't feeling heard, or they weren't feeling like they were getting well within that system. So if you're listening to this, like you said, share this podcast out. Keep what I'm trying to do with my books is I'm just trying to open the conversation. Now it's our job to all step into it and keep talking about it and learn it and share what we're seeing work for us.
Nice. So true. And if someone finds this valuable, do reach out to Dr. Pelz. I'm sure she'd love to hear that you found this impactful on her channel. So comment on that. And there's going to be links and stuff in the description of this episode so you can connect with her more. Dr. Mindy Pelz, thanks for coming on. This was a wonderful experience today.
Dr. Anthony, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate you.
All right. Bye, y'all.